Today's project is going to be the first in a 7-day series of autumn or fall cards, which could also be used for Thanksgiving. I'm working on hot press watercolour paper, and I've chosen an image by Elusive Images that is a tree stamp, and I'm going to stamp this using VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. And then I'm going to spritz the card with some water once the ink has dried so that I can apply some Brushos colours. If you're not familiar with Brushos, they are a very intense and concentrated pigment that reacts with water, so you can add them to a palette and make them into watercolours to paint with, or you can tip them directly from the pots, sprinkling them onto a wet piece of watercolour paper or onto a dry piece of watercolour paper and add the water afterwards. It just creates different effects. I find more control if you actually add the water first. Once I'm happy with the amount of colour on the page, I'm using a glaze brush to drag some of that colour across the base of the card and create some ground for the tree. Now I'm taking a second piece of hot press watercolour paper and I'm just adding water around the edges. I've chosen some of the same colours that I used on the stamped image, and this is because I want to form a backing sheet or a mat for my card, and I wanted it to be exactly the same colours. Whilst my backing is drying, I want to add some text to the front of the card, so I've selected an autumn themed stamp set by Joy Crafts, and I'm using VersaFine ink in Onyx Black to stamp with. Now I'm using archival ink in Vermilion to go around the edges of my card and to form a frame for my image. And then I'm using exactly the same process to form a border around my layering piece. This is a Micron pen by Sakura, and I'm using this to add some more definition to the ground and make it look like the tree is actually on the ground, not in midair. So a few little strokes here and there just to represent some grasses and ground level. Once I've finished the front of the card, I'm using double-sided tape to add it to my layer, and the brand that I'm using here is Sellotape brand. Finally, I decide to add a second mat, so it's another piece of the hot press watercolour paper, because I wanted it to match the same colour on the front of the card, and this makes the card 6 by 6. Again, I'm using the archival ink around the edges so it matches the other layers. The next step is to create an insert for my card, and for this I've selected a die by Spellbinders. This is Scalloped Labels 1. I'm going to add colour to my insert using Distress Inks, and the 3 colours that I've chosen are Bon d'Or, Spice Marmalade and Mustard Seed. So I'm beginning here to add colour around the edges using a piece of Ranger Cut and Dry foam, and then I add some stamping so that the colours are very similar to those on the front of the card. Now I'm using VersaFine ink in Onyx Black to add my sentiment, and this again has been taken from the Joycraft stamp set that I used on the front of the card. And then to finish off the insert, I'm going back to the archival ink in Vermilion, and I'm using this with a piece of Ranger cut and dry foam around the edges so that it matches the layers on the front of the card. The final step is to add my insert to the card, and I've already put together the front of the card onto my base. The base is 325 GSM smooth white cardstock, and I've stamped the reverse with my Judekin stamp, which I stamp on all of my cards. If you're interested in finding out more about that stamp, I do have a link in the video description to the full product list, and you will also find there my social media links. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll come back again for the second day in this 7-day autumn themed card series, and thank you for watching.